You stand on the first tee. The group behind you is watching. You take the same swing you have taken for 40 years and the ball climbs, drifts right, and dies 20 yards short of where it used to land. And you tell yourself that this is just what age does to a golf game. It is not. I'm going to tell you something that cost me $12 and gave me back nearly 30 yards of carry with no new driver, no lessons, and no trip to the gym. The problem was never your swing. It was the little wooden thing you push into the ground and never once think about. I found this out by accident on a cold Tuesday morning, standing on the third hole of a course I had played for 11 years. And there is a patent filed in December of 1899 that proves men understood this before most of us were even born. I will read you exactly what it said before we are through. You already own everything you need to do this. You have just been using it wrong the whole time. Let me take you back to that Tuesday, because I need you to understand how ordinary I was about all of this. I was 62 years old. I had been playing golf since I was in my late 20s, and for most of those years I was a solid, respectable driver of the ball. Not long, not a bomber, but straight and reliable and good enough. Then somewhere in my late 50s it started slipping. First it was 5 yards, then it was 10. Then one summer I looked up and realized the young fellows in my group were hitting their second shots, while I was still reaching for a fairway wood just to get near the green. I did what every man my age does. I blamed my body. I blamed my back, my hips, my slowing hands. And then, like a fool, I opened my wallet. I bought a new driver. $450 for a club the salesman swore was built for, and I will never forget his exact words, the mature golfer. I bought it, took it out, and hit it exactly as short as the old one. So I bought a special stiff then soft shaft. I bought low compression balls marketed to slower swings. Over about 3 years, I am not exaggerating when I tell you I spent close to $2,000 chasing distance that never came back. And here is the part that still makes my face go hot when I think about it. Not one of those products, not one of those salesmen, not one of those glossy magazine ads ever mentioned the cheapest and most powerful variable in the entire golf swing. The thing that costs less than a sandwich, the thing I am about to hand you across this fence, because on that cold Tuesday I had forgotten my tees. I had my expensive driver, my expensive balls, and an empty pocket where my tees should have been. And a stranger in the group ahead of me, an older gentleman, easily in his 70s, reached into his bag and tossed me a handful of the longest wooden tees I had ever seen. Nearly 3¼ inches long. I thought they were a joke. I thought they were novelty tees, the kind they sell at the pro shop counter for tourists. But I had no choice. So I teed my ball up on that ridiculous tall tee, and because I was embarrassed and just wanted to get the shot over with, I pushed it in only halfway. The ball sat up higher than I had ever teed it in my life. More than half the ball was floating above the top edge of my driver. I almost pulled it back down. It looked wrong. Everything I had ever been told said, tee it low, keep it under control, do not go chasing the sky. I hit it anyway. And that ball took off on a line and a height I had not seen in 6 or 7 years. It carried the bunker I had not carried since my 50s. The older gentleman just nodded, like he had watched this happen 100 times before, and said, "You were choking that ball to death down there, friend. I did not understand what had just happened. But I understood that something had, and I needed to know why." So let me stop the story right there, because before I tell you what I learned, you need to understand why you have never heard this. Because I promise you, this was not an accident. And once you see who benefits from your ignorance, you are going to be as angry as I was. Think for a moment about how much money moves through this game. A new driver every 18 months. Premium balls at $50 a dozen. Lessons at $80 or $90 an hour. Launch monitor fittings. Training aids sold on late-night television. Every single one of those things is sold to you on one promise, the promise of distance. Now ask yourself a simple question. If the fastest, cheapest way for an older golfer to get his distance back was to change a $12 wooden tee and a 2-inch setup adjustment, how many $400 drivers do you think that company would sell next spring? That is the answer. That is the whole answer. Nobody is getting rich teaching you to move a piece of wood a little higher in the ground. There is no markup on knowledge. There is no repeat business in a fix that works the first time and lasts forever. And so, the single most important adjustment available to a slowing golfer got quietly buried under a mountain of things that cost real money and, for most of us, barely moved the needle at all. But here is what infuriated me most when I dug into it. This is not new. This is not some modern hack. Men understood the power of lifting the ball more than a century ago, and the proof is sitting in the records of the United States Patent Office right now. On December the 12th, 1899, a man named George Franklin Grant was granted United States Patent number 638,920. George Grant was a dentist. He was one of the first African American graduates of the Harvard Dental School, and he was an avid golfer who was sick and tired of the standard practice of the day, which was to build a little wet mound of sand by hand before every drive and balance the ball on top of it. Grant invented the wooden golf tee, and read what he wrote in that patent about the whole point of the thing. His stated goal was to elevate the ball above the ground and hold it there so it could be struck cleanly, freely, and without the club being slowed by the turf. Elevate the ball, free the strike. That was the founding purpose of the tee, written into the official record before the turn of the 20th century. Then, in the 1920s, another dentist, a man named William Lowell, popularized the painted wooden tee he called the Ready Tee, and it swept across America. And here is the quiet thing that happened over the next 100 years. The tee stopped being a tool you used with intention and became a throwaway, a freebie, something you grabbed by the fistful from a bowl at the counter and never thought about again. The founding idea that the height of the ball off the ground is a weapon got lost. We inherited the object and forgot the instructions, so I went looking for the instructions. And what I found in the modern research explained exactly what happened to me on that third tee, and it is going to explain exactly what has been happening to your drives too. Here is the thing nobody told me for 30 years of golf. When you swing a driver, the single biggest factor deciding how far that ball flies, once you accept that your swing speed is what it is, comes down to 3 numbers. Launch angle, which is how high the ball leaves the club. Spin rate, which is how fast it is spinning backward. And angle of attack, which is whether your club head is moving slightly down or slightly up at the moment it meets the ball. For a younger man swinging over 100 miles an hour, he can get away with almost anything. He has so much speed that the ball flies no matter what, but you and I do not have that speed anymore. And when your swing speed drops into the 80s or the 70s, those 3 numbers become everything. They are the difference between a drive that soars and carries and a drive that comes off low, falls out of the sky, and thuds down 40 yards short. The launch monitor companies have measured this to death. The data from systems like TrackMan, the radar units the professionals use, shows something that should be printed on the wall of every pro shop in the country. A golfer with a slower swing speed gets his absolute maximum distance not by hitting down on the ball, and not even by hitting it flat, but by catching the ball on the way up, by hitting up on it with what they call a positive angle of attack. Now think about what happens when you tee the ball low, the way I did for 30 years, the way you were probably taught. When the ball sits low, your instinct is to hit down and into it, the same way you would a shot from the fairway. You are delivering a downward glancing blow. And that downward blow does 2 terrible things to an older swing. It launches the ball too low, and it puts far too much backspin on it. Too much spin makes the ball climb steeply, stall out in the air, and drop straight down like a wounded duck. That low, ballooning, dying flight you have been cursing, that is not your age. That is your tee height feeding your worst instinct. Maybe you know that feeling already. You stand on the range, you tee it high, you see one drive fly straight and long, and a part of you thinks, how many years did I lose because nobody told me this one small thing? That thought is exactly why I put everything I have dug up into a set of books called The Complete Senior Golf System. It starts with Smart Basics, where I show you the exact driver loft mistake costing you 25 yards right now and simple hip and wrist fixes you can try this very weekend. Then Swing Deeper walks you through what really changes in your swing after 55 and the driver shaft flex and loft numbers that actually move the needle for a slower speed. And the full complete system hands you the whole equipment blueprint, the shafts, the lofts, the grooves, and the ball signs tuned for senior swing speeds. It is 513 pages and more of real, tested, on-course material built for men our age, not for 30-year-old tour pros. And you do not have to take my word for it tonight. Do the same thing I did. Grab any long tee you already own, tee one ball low and one ball high with more than half of it above the crown, swing your normal swing at both, and watch which one flies farther and straighter, all for free, right there in your own backyard. If it does what I say, and it will, then when you want the rest, the fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description, or the pinned comment. Every yard you have been leaving in the ground has been costing you rounds for years, so there is no reason to keep paying that price. Now let me tell you about the one last piece I promised. The detail that turns a good tip into the trick that changed my golf for good. Now flip it. Tee the ball high, so more than half of it sits above the top edge of the driver, and something completely different happens. You physically cannot hit down on a ball that is sitting up that high without embarrassing yourself. The high tee forces your club to reach the ball a fraction of a second later in the swing arc when the club head has already bottomed out and started traveling upward. You start catching the ball on the upswing without even trying. Your launch angle goes up, your spin comes down. And that combination, high launch with low spin, is the exact recipe the radar data says a slower swinger needs. It is the launch of a rocket instead of the launch of a mortar. And the straightness, which is the part I could not believe, comes along for free. When you catch the ball flush on the way up, with the club head moving level or upward, you strike it more on the center and upper part of the face. That reduces the side spin that sends your ball curving off into the trees. A well-launched ball with less spin simply does not have the energy to hook or slice as hard. My drives did not just get longer that summer. They got straighter. And I had spent years and hundreds of dollars trying to fix that slice from the wrong end. Now, I know exactly what a certain kind of person is thinking right now, because I was that person. You are thinking this all sounds fine for someone with time to fiddle, but you are not about to overhaul your whole game, and you are not sure you can even change a habit you have had for decades. So let me talk to you directly, because this next part is for the doubter, and it is the easiest thing in the whole video. You do not need to change your swing. Let me say that again, because it is the part that stopped me from trying for weeks. You do not need a lesson. You do not need to think about angle of attack while you are standing over the ball, and you do not need to buy a single thing you cannot get for $12. Here is what you do this week, with what you already have. First, get yourself a pack of the longer tees, the 3¼ inch ones. A pack of them costs about $12 and will last you a full season or more if you do not lose them. If you already have a few long tees rattling in the bottom of your bag, you can start this very afternoon for nothing. Second, when you tee up your driver, push the tee into the ground until the ball sits so that the top edge of your driver, when you set it down behind the ball, cuts the ball right across its middle. The equator of the ball should line up roughly with the crown, the very top edge, of your driver. That means more than half the ball is sitting up in the open air above the club. It is going to look too high. It looked insane to me. Trust the $18.99 patent over your nerves. Third, and this is the only swing thought you need, move the ball forward in your stance. Position it so it lines up with the inside of your lead heel, your left heel for a right-handed player. That forward position lets your club reach the ball later in its arc when it is already sweeping upward. You do not have to try to hit up. The tee height and the ball position do the work for you. All you do is make your normal, comfortable swing and let the setup catch the ball on the rise. That is it. That is the whole thing. Long tee, ball teed high with half of it above the crown, and ball played forward off your lead heel. 3 changes, none of which cost you effort or a new club, and every one of which you can do on the range this Saturday morning to prove it to yourself before you ever risk it in a match. I did exactly that. I went to the range with a small bucket, and I hit 10 balls teed low the way I always had, and then 10 balls teed high off the long tees. The difference was so obvious I did not need a launch monitor to see it. The high tees were carrying a good club length past the low ones, landing softer and holding their line. I stood there feeling equal parts thrilled and furious. thrilled that I had my game back, furious that it had taken me, a stranger and a forgotten patent, to find something this simple. But I told you at the start there was one more thing. A specific detail I found buried in the research that ties this whole business together, and it is the piece that turns a good tip into the trick that changed my golf for good. So let me give it to you now, because you have earned it. Everything I have told you so far gets you most of the way there. But when I kept digging, I found the precise relationship that the fitting engineers use, and it is more exact than the loose advice most golfers stumble into. The optimal teed ball position, according to the testing done with high-speed cameras and radar by the club fitting world, is not simply high. It is a specific ratio. The center of the ball should sit at or just above the top of the driver's crown, which for a modern large driver head puts the bottom of the ball at roughly 1.5 inches off the ground. And here's the detail almost nobody gets right. You should be striking the ball not on the geometric center of the club face, but slightly above the center, high on the face. There is a reason for that, and it is one of the most beautiful hidden facts in the whole sport. Modern driver faces are built with something engineers call vertical gear effect and a curvature called roll. What that means in plain English is that the upper part of the driver face is specifically designed to launch the ball higher, and this is the magic, with less backspin than the center of the face. So when you tee the ball high enough to strike it a little above center, you are not making a mistake. You are using a feature the manufacturers engineered into that expensive club head and then never bothered to teach you how to access. You paid for it. They just never told you the tee height was the key that unlocked it. Put it all together and here is what happens for a golfer who has lost speed. You tee it so the ball's center is at the crown. You play it forward off the lead heel. You make your normal swing and catch it on the rise, high on the face, where the club is built to reduce spin. Launch angle up, spin down, side spin reduced. And the radar data on slower swing speed says this exact combination is worth, depending on the golfer, anywhere from 15 to as much as 30 extra yards of carry. Not from a new body, not from a new club. From a $12 box of longer tees and knowing where to put the ball, I want you to sit with how old this idea really is. George Grant, in 1899, wrote that the entire purpose of his invention was to elevate the ball and free the strike. Elevate the ball. He understood the principle before the automobile was common on American roads. Then, for over 100 years, as the game turned into a machine for selling equipment, that founding idea got buried under marketing, and men like me spent thousands of dollars solving a problem that a dentist had already solved for the price of a piece of wood. The knowledge existed. It was pushed aside because there was no profit in it. A few old-timers, like the gentleman on the third tee, kept it quietly alive and handed it across to whoever forgot their tees. And now you have it too. The season after that cold Tuesday was the best I had played in a decade. I was back in the fairways I thought I had lost forever. And every time a younger fellow asked me what new driver I had bought, I just smiled and told him it was an old one, a very old one, from 1899. So here is what I really want you to take from all of this. It is not about golf, not really. It is about the fact that the thing quietly stealing 30 yards from your drives was never your age. It was a piece of knowledge that got taken from you, on purpose, because your not knowing it was worth more to somebody than your knowing it. And you just took it back for $12. If you are the kind of person who has always suspected that the simplest, cheapest, most reliable answer was buried on purpose to protect somebody else's profit, then you already understand exactly what just happened here. You are my kind of person. This whole corner of the world exists for people like us, the ones who would rather recover a lost, working method than be sold a shiny new one that does not. Now I want to hear from you, and I want you to be specific, because I read these. Go down to the comments and tell me one thing. When you set your driver down behind a teed ball, where does the top edge cut the ball right now, today, before you change anything? Below the middle? Right at the middle? Tell me where your tee height sits, and I will tell you how much distance I think you have been leaving in the ground. Leave that comment. Do not just think it, type it. And if you want more of these, the buried, tested, penny-cheap methods that earlier generations knew and we were trained to forget, then come join the rest of us who are digging them back up one at a time. Because the next one I am working on is about the golf ball itself, and a 5-minute test you can do in your own kitchen sink with a cup of salt that tells you whether the balls in your bag are secretly costing you accuracy on every single shot. You will never look at that dozen the same way again. I spent $2,000 learning what a stranger taught me for free with a handful of long tees. You did not have to spend a thing. Go tee it high this weekend and let it fly. That video showed you what happened on that tee, but the full tee height method, hole by hole, lives just past where we stopped today, inside my membership. There you can ask me your own questions, and a real person, me, answers you myself, not some machine. And you wouldn't be alone in the old ways circle. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel any time with one click. Now that your tee is dialed in, let's add real distance to every drive. I've got 5 simple driver secrets that will surprise you and give you instant yards. That video's starting right here.